Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders would like to welcome entrepreneur and founder at Growth Shop, Mark Patchett. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Mark, so I'd like to congratulate you on all your achievements. Can you share with our audience how your entrepreneurial journey started and what led you to start up Growth Shop?
Sure. So it started quite a long time ago, and a lot of it kicked off with my granddad. So my granddad was quite a pioneer. So he's originally from Italy, and then he shifted over to the, I guess, equally sunny shores of Australia. And he was one of the big driving forces behind the health food industry in Australia. Yes. And there's lots of fun article clippings about, madman sells mung beans and all these different pieces, which if you walk into a Whole Foods now feel very common and very well accepted. But in those days it was, meat and 3 veg. So he was one of the big driving forces behind that. He worked his absolute ass off. And unfortunately, when I was quite young, when he retired, they went to trace their roots to Italy, and his body wasn't used to having such a lack of stress. So he had a massive stroke and was never able to speak again. So the whole time I was growing up, he was sharing all these business books with me and all these tapes, there's wonderful old things. So I started feeling very inspired by his journey, but I learned something from him, which was one, that business was fun and a really powerful way to connect with lots of people. But then two was the dangers of overworking and becoming too stressed. That part only really sunk in when thinking about the Grow Shop model. But the business, the kind of spark started from there, and started lots of businesses, from fireworks things at school to later essential oils companies when I was working with America, walking to work at 7 a.m., talking with suppliers. And then it just led to working with lots of amazing companies throughout the journey towards London and then to the US.
Amazing. That's an incredible story. So you have more than 10 years of experience in e-com/growth, building lean growth teams to rapidly scale businesses to over $1 billion in revenue. So can you tell us more about this and what made you focus on such a highly specialized area?
Sure. So there's a lot of good stuff behind it. I think where it started in the direct-to-consumer/e-commerce space was that I love creating brands and love creating products. I remember the first time when I started my essential oils company, and I had all these samples shipped from India, from France, from Chicago. And then it's expensive as hell to get this stuff shipped to Australia. So I spent half my capital on bloody logistics. And then I get the product delivered, and I unwrap it, I pull apart all of the bubble wrap, and then you see this brand, this kind of logo and these colors that I'd envisioned. I was using websites like 99 Designs then, and then you get to hold it. And I'd only been working in the digital space building stuff, and then you get a physical product, and you feel so connected with what you built, and it feels like a real achievement versus just being something intangible like digital. So
amazing.
Yeah, I love that feeling. And then the digital side of it was just so fun, because you've created this very real thing that you can hold and touch. And then you start using things like third-party logistics and fulfillment by Amazon, and you start selling to people. And out of nowhere, I'm selling to Mauve Davis from Idaho. And I remember having a map and pulling all the addresses where I was shipping things, and you realize that your products are sitting in people's houses throughout the world. So it was a really, really fun way of taking this concept, having something that was very real, being able to hold and touch it, and then connect with the entire world through a direct-to-consumer model.
Yeah, absolutely. So that leads me to the next question. What have some of your biggest career lessons and learnings been? Because I'm sure there's been multiple, but what really stands out for you?
There's a few big ones. One of the ones that took me a long time to learn was what I was very good at and what I wasn't very good at. As I always have these amazing ideas, and I'd be able to go from kind of 0 to 1 very effectively. I'd create the brand, I'd create the website, but then these ideas would kind of die. And I started learning about different archetypes, and that I was a dabbler, which meant that it wasn't that I was failing. It was I was really good at 0 to 1, but then I needed to start finding people that would complement where I was weak. So I took a concept that I learned in university, the Swot Analysis, which I was very grateful to get some value out of the 50 grand I spent on that degree. And I did the Swot Analysis on myself. And I was very, very honest with what I was good at and what I was shit at. And then within that, I'd identify 2 groupings. So one was things that I just need to get better at. So regardless of where I'm strong or weak, there's some things that you just need to be strong at, things like negotiation. So I I'd buy books and courses and work with coaches to strengthen those gaps. But then I'd find the bits that I could execute effortlessly. These were like my innate strengths. Then I'd double down on those. Then I'd find these different gaps where I'd need to bring people in that would have different types of brains. So a good example is someone that's very operationally minded, someone that loves a high level of attention to detail. And then I started essentially just filling the gaps with either more knowledge or different types of people. So I think it's essential to be very, very honest with yourself and analyze that.
Yes, and also, like you say, you can focus on, obviously you focus on your strengths, but if you know that you have the ability to also strengthen more in those areas, that also is beneficial.
Yeah, entirely. And you can do it in a phased approach as well, because a lot of people may say, oh, I don't have the money to do it. I've only got a new business. You can find retired people that may be geniuses at areas you're not very strong, and you can create advisory boards with people that just really, really want to share and really work on exciting projects. So even before you've got cash, you can always get access to it, or you can get part-time people, you can hire contractors. So there's always ways to do it affordably.
Yeah, absolutely. So that leads me to talking about leadership or the lack of leadership. So from an entrepreneurial, corporate, and global perspective, what do you believe needs to change the current cultural narrative? And what do you believe you do differently that sets you apart in your leadership style? And can you give us any examples?
Sure. I think there's a lot of change going on within the market, and it's gone from this perspective where people just need to grind and the boss is the boss and everybody else is just a worker, to now you see things where it's more about like anti-hustle. And I had to reflect on this a lot as well, because I thought it was about anti-hustle for myself, but I realized I like to work really, really hard. What I was needing to change was the hard that I was working on, to make sure that I was working on problems that interested me and problems that really challenged me. So I think the new shift in leadership is giving people more autonomy and spending more time to find out which problems really energize them. And you find things like foosball tables and after work drinks, all that stuff's kind of cool, but nothing's as fulfilling as somebody working on a problem that really, really excites them. And then realizing that you could have one function within a company, but there may be 3 people that will want to do it in slightly different ways. And I think the companies that work out how to tailor different roles to people based on individually who they are, I think is going to be very powerful. And I think another element of that is how people communicate within a company, and a company taking that into account. So for example, I remember I had a job where the founder would never let us prepare for brainstorms, because that's how they work things out. But I like to prepare. I like to spend some time meditating on it by myself, really building up a deep understanding of the problem to then start sharing with others. So I think companies need to lead from a perspective that individuals communicate in very different ways as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that leads me to obviously talking about our current environment, which is obviously the pandemic, which has turned our world inside out and upside down. And it has impacted both on a positive and a negative way, depending on which industry people are in. So how have you had to adapt your business, and have you applied this approach to help your clients?
For sure, for sure. A lot happened here as well. So at Nectar Slate, we built a highly distributed team in the beginning, and this is all pre-pandemic. And it worked very well because we liked to have the ability to hire amazing people wherever they were in the world. So I'd done that myself. I traveled a lot while building companies. So we had that perspective building Grow Shop in the beginning, but then Grow Shop in the new form kicked off last January. So we actually built the entire business throughout the pandemic. So we had the ability to communicate really well. We used tools like Slack and of course Zoom, but we'd also build out hubs around the world. So we'd still have like an office location in London and also in Kiev, where we'd give people the flexibility to work from home, but then make the decision to come in and work with others, so they'd still have that ability to connect. And what was interesting about it is that countries dealt with the pandemic in different ways. Yes. So when London was fully locked down, no one could even really come into the office. Kiev was actually still open. So we're able to be over there and still work with the team and build up that team. Then Kiev would shut and London would open and kind of pop around. But what we built out was a system that allowed people to connect in person, but then also have that level of connection digitally. So we do things such as Donuts, and Donut is a really cool app that is built into the Slack messaging platform. And what it does is it connects random people within the company. It could be the founder, it could be a new designer, and then it carves out 15 to 30 minutes for them to talk about non-work things. And you start seeing these amazing relationships form, because you realize how unique everybody is when someone maybe, talking to a designer and you realize they love to go spearfishing or they love to go deep sea diving, and immediately it builds this connection, even though it's digital. But we had to make a conscious effort to build those tools and processes into our typical workflows to make sure people build those relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. So in speaking about that, or leading to the next question, what have been some of your biggest career highlights?
I think the one that always stands out comes down to the values of GrowShop, which is smarter, faster, happier, which is how can you build really big brands that have a positive impact in the world really quickly, while everyone within the company can confidently say it's the happiest they've ever been in a role, which is really hard, because you always have these conflicting
personalities and
it's really tough. But one of the rewarding moments was seeing one of the brands we have a big equity share in. We took them from $1 million to 30 million last year, really fast by any standard. But then we did the first employee survey, and we had almost unanimous 5 stars from everybody. And it was amazing, not just seeing the rating, but reading the level of detail that people went into with these reviews. It was very, very, very touching to know that you'd built something and you'd given people opportunity, and you'd given them kind of a blank canvas to craft something that they were extremely proud of, and that they were genuinely really, really happy. That was a huge win for me. Then there was the big numbers. It was being part of the team at Nectar and taking that business from 10 to 240 million, working with people like Scott McLeod, who led that team. Growing it that quick was just insane. It was like having a tidal wave behind you, but you're kind of building the boat as you're ripping down the wave, and it worked. That was insane. And then I think the other ones that have always stood out are clients. Like, for example, one of my first clients when I was working in a company called Web Profits in Sydney, he had a property business, and I never realized the kind of profound impact I had on his business until we had a random phone call while I was in Moldova and he was in Sydney. This was about a month ago. And he said that to this day in his company, his hiring process still uses a model of me to hire the people in his company. I was like, holy shit.
Wow.
And to think that was, I don't know, 7 years ago or something, 8 years ago, to think that I was like, oh, this guy still remembers me. And then to know that was part of a process. So to know that you when you do a good job and you really, really care about who you're helping, to know that has a lasting impression on them. That was a big one.
Amazing. So you've worked with over 250 companies, including some of the world's biggest brands. Consumers have become far more brand conscious, particularly regarding brands and product transparency. Is this something that you focus on when working with those large companies and businesses?
So I think there's a few interesting trends that are coming when you consider performance versus brand. And it used to really mean brand, which was buying big above the line placements, things like TV, things like billboards. And then you think about performance, which is about seeing a very fast return on your money, or having a very quantifiable, detailed ability to understand what's working and what's not working.
Yeah.
Those are blurred completely, because you see the new brands that are really mattering stand for something. And I don't think brand is about how you buy your media or how you allocate your dollars. I think it's about the continuity of the message that you have in terms of how you connect with people. So we started thinking about this a lot, and we're like, why do we have to separate out brand investment and performance? Because performance is really about seeing an ROI, which is great.
Yes.
But traditional performance used to be about buy now, buy now, buy now. It used to be the bottom of the funnel. We're like, how do we craft a message which makes people feel a true connection with the company while still having some kind of commercial component, which allows them to buy something on the back of that.
Yes.
So I think you're seeing this all fuse within one sphere now, which is a concept we call performance brand. And we don't work with very large brands at GrowShop. I worked with them previously, companies like, I guess, organizations like the BBC and Channel 4 and Qantas. Now we work with smaller companies that are usually doing about 3 to 5 million in revenue that want to 10x their business.
Yes.
But we take those lessons we learned from working from these giant types of brands, and then we try and deploy that within their businesses.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's good. I mean, that's why I was asking, just between the difference, when working with, obviously at that point in time, bigger companies versus what you're doing now. So that's very insightful. So as the founder of Growth Shop, you lead a team of people, which requires skillful leadership. So what do you believe makes you different when leading your team compared to other CEOs and founders? And why do you have such a great culture within Growth Shop with regard to your staff as well? And why do your staff stay? Because like you did mention, they obviously love what they do. So it does make a difference, because sometimes there is a higher staff turnover. So I'm just interested to know what it is you do differently.
For sure. So I think a lot of it comes down to the smarter, faster, happier component, which has meant that at times we have to slow down, even when we've seen really fast growth with the company. But if we look at it and people are burning out and people are becoming unhappy, we sacrifice that fast growth, and we understand why, and we make a change. And one of the key things with leadership that we try and show is that we do what we say on the tin, which a lot of companies may have values and they may have these lofty missions, but it doesn't actually mean shit if they don't make changes. So we show to our team that they are the priority. And even if we're taking a financial hit, they're more important, as ultimately when the team's really happy and they're working on the right goals and challenges, the business is going to do well anyway. But if you take shortcuts and you sacrifice people's happiness, people leave, people become unproductive, and people just aren't happy, which isn't a nice kind of environment to be around. And one of the big pieces there is that we want to show people that you can work towards a long-term goal, but you don't need to sacrifice happiness in the immediate. And you make very real changes within the company to prove that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've managed over $150 million in spend across almost every channel out there, as well as hundreds of hours in UX customer. So can you please share with us your key experiences from doing this?
So one of the big bits you learn from spending, or I like to think of it as donating a lot of money to the Zuckerberg Foundation, is that never be scared of big budgets. It's actually easier when you start spending more. So, and this would be useful for people that are, managing accounts. Just go for the big stuff. Always go for the big stuff. But if you're a company that is trying to scale their accounts, don't put too much trust in the pixels and the technology. That stuff works really well when you've got the fundamentals of your business right, which means really, really understanding that you've got a product that solves a unique problem, and you give people an easy reason to buy it. So, I always say that you should be able to communicate why someone should buy your product on the back of a napkin. It should be that easy. And if you don't know what it is, the best thing I learned from all of the user research is that you don't need to do deep dives in data. You just need to talk to people. You just need to ask people the right questions. You say, what excited you about our brand? Why did you end up purchasing from us? How come you purchased stuff from somebody else? What did our product do for you that you may not have expected? What do you wish it would do? So you can start getting these insights, and you only need information from 20 to 30 people to start seeing really, really consistent patterns. And you want to make sure that you're talking to people that you don't know. If your mum's always going to say that it's fantastic and she loves you, but
it's always going to come from a place of bias anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So you always want to be asking random people. And if you don't have customers yet, print something out. And then when you're at a coffee shop, ask people. I used to stand in queues and ask people if they had a minute. And I was like, hey, can I show you something I'm working on? What do you think about it? And I used to find that strangers would give me very, very honest answers. So I think the biggest piece of advice I can give there is focus on talking to people and realizing that there's real people behind all the clicks that lead to your purchases.
Yes. So what is the unique speciality within Growth Shop that separates you from your competitors?
So what we've done that's a little bit different is that we've had experience on both sides of the fence. So a traditional agency will usually have 1, 2, or 3 strong competencies. So say they may be good at Facebook ads. When you work client side and you're building these businesses, you realize that you don't always need Facebook. And Facebook may be on pause until you work out your pricing and your promotional strategy. So we understand both sides. But what we've also done is we've built essentially the full stack team structure that you'd find in a venture-backed company. So it has everything from data to research to Facebook to creative. And what we do when we work with companies is we may have a fixed retainer, 20 grand a month, but we solve problems in sprints. So we may say, all right, we don't want to spend any money top of funnel until we've got all of our conversion metrics working. So it could be the email flows, the SMS flows. So we allocate that budget to fix those problems. Then once we've fixed those, we move on to the next. So it means that you're getting fractional access to amazing top tier talent, but you're only paying for what you need. Where the traditional agency model is front load the work and then harvest all of it when it becomes really easy. Because we've got skin in the game, we take equity / warrant / revenue / profit share with these different companies. It means that our incentives are completely aligned.
Absolutely. And I think it's a much better way of doing it, because then you also have a vested interest in making it work, a distant creator between you and the person. So I definitely think it's a much better way of doing it.
Yeah, for sure.
As an entrepreneur, one of the biggest issues this pandemic has highlighted is mental health. So what do you do to take care of your own mental health? And what are some of the systems or practices you have implemented to support those who work with you?
It's a good one. It's a tricky one because it's very different for what I need to get better at practicing what I preach for my brain.
Yes.
For the company, we've got a bunch of fun things. We do things like NQAs, which is like a no questions asked day, where you don't need to have a reason. If you feel like you're at a bit of a breaking point and you need to regroup, you just ask. And we had to really show the team that we meant this. We'd give people almost like forced holidays, book them in a hotel for a couple of nights to say, look, we're your spotter. We see that it looks like you're burning out a little bit here. Take the day, take a couple. That's really nice. But then we have things such as paternity, which if you've got a wonderful little animal, you can take 2 days off a year to just hang out with your pet.
That's amazing.
It's a fun one. It's a really fun one because these little creatures make you feel wonderful. That's what I miss. I used to have a fun cat. Then for myself, I book kind of little working trips away. So I like a change of scenery to try and get perspective. So even if I've got calls, I'll book myself somewhere nice where I'll have a lovely view. It could be a nice ocean breeze, becomes quite tranquil. And I find that the shift in perspective and taking a little trip, even taking the flight, like I love taking a flight where you're switched off for 3 hours.
Oh, it's the best because no one can contact you.
I know. I remember when they started introducing Wi-Fi, like cross-Atlantic Wi-Fi. I was like, no, cancel it.
Well, half the time when I'm on a flight, it never works anyway, so it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. You just switch off. And so I think moving around and having a change of pace is really, really useful as well. And then I think also not neglecting the importance of your physical health and the connection that has on mental health. So I did like a test. I did like a no booze 100. Even though it wasn't like a problem, it was just a pattern. You know what I mean? Where Friday night you'd have a bit of drinks, which is nice to blow off some steam. But I wanted to see what would happen if I just completely removed it. And then what I found is I lost a bunch of weight, and I was spending early mornings on Saturday going to the gym, and then that had a really positive knock-on impact on my mental health as well. Because there's small things such as like anxiety that creeps up. When you become very stressed and your body doesn't have a way to process it, or you don't have anything within the current way you're living to process it. So focusing on physical health and forcing myself with like a personal trainer where I had to commit to it was really, really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So that leads me to the two final questions. What are the 3 key pieces of advice you would give to other entrepreneurs who are looking to either start up their own business or pursue a similar direction or career? And then what legacy would you like to leave, or how would you like to be remembered? Because some people don't like the word legacy. So how would you like to be remembered?
I think the pieces of advice is that it's really hard, but being really hard is really good. It means that you're pushing yourself. And it's the same thing as going to the gym. You've done a good job, when your muscles feel a little bit sore, they grow back stronger. And there was a quote I read the other day that really resonated, which it said that it's not about making your first million. It's about the person you have to become to get there.
Yes.
I was like, shit, that's quite profound.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then with that, so I use a tool called Bear, BEAR, which is like a note-taking tool, because I do like big brain dumps to try and work out what's going on in my head.
Yeah.
And I've taken a diary with that for 7 years or something. And I typically only use it when it's tough because I'm trying to work shit out.
Yeah.
But it's amazing when you scroll back. And I remember going back to 2017 and I was looking at what my goals were. And when I was like, once I do this, I'll be happy. And they were all goals that I'd blasted past and I didn't even realize. And it took to referencing a snapshot of where my brain was at years and years ago to appreciate how much I'd actually achieved.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you move so fast that you can often forget how much you've done that you should be really, really proud of. So I think that's good. And then the third one is making sure you've got the right support network, which is comprised of people that have already done what you want to do.
Yes.
You know, people often find it a bit daunting trying to work out who should these mentors be, but it doesn't need to be, chatting to random people at the bar until you find someone. It can be, there's amazing Facebook groups out there and just be active with them. But I also use services like clarity.fm, which allows you to pay by the minute to talk to phenomenal people. Like I'm talking world class. And the reason these people are on it isn't to make money. They're people that have already succeeded that back, and their currency is to share and to mentor. So I highly, highly recommend using services like that. And, you know, some people are like $8 a minute, but to get 15 minutes, you'll feel it's like a breath of fresh air when you share this problem that you think is just engulfing you. And someone's like, oh yeah, I've done that. I've been through that. Here's what I did. And it's quite profound. What was the second question?
And then the last question was, how would you like to be remembered, or what legacy would you like to leave?
The legacy. That's a fun one.
That's always hard when you have to answer it for yourself.
I think the big bit, I think, comes back to the values of what we're doing at Grow Shop, which is for people to see and to know that you can build amazing brands that stand for something, that make the world a better place.
Yes.
And you can be really, really happy while you're going through the entire process. And happy doesn't mean stress-free, sitting on a beach, kicking back. It should mean that you're feeling really challenged, but in a way that it's achievable, and in a way where you look back every week and every month and you see the amazing progress you've made and feeling really proud of that. So I think showing people that that's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's amazing. So thank you so much, Mark, for joining us today. And if people would like to connect with you, what are the best platforms for them to do so?
You can hit me up on LinkedIn, or you can just email me, mark@growth.shop. Always happy to hear from you.
Thank you so much. And hopefully we can have you back in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you.